What is the thing we don't talk about? In your family? My grandfather had a lover 4 years before him and my grandmother divorced. He started seeing her a few years before I was born. Right after the divorce was final, my grandma died from cancer and my grandpa married his old lover. She has a son, 2 years older than me. Looks just like him. No one has dared to ask any questions. Challenge accepted. Shoot your old man's number. We don't talk about the authentic shrunken heads my grandfather collected. They were buried with him. Probably for the best. Those things are almost never not cursed. The Thanksgiving meal prep where my mother got her hand stuck inside the frozen turkey for several hours. Bringing this one up gets you the laser beam eyes death glare. Why are you part of MR? Bean's extended family or something? My second cousin was always very introverted. Nobody ever really saw him and he never really met anyone beyond immediate family due to him just not being interested in knowing any of us. He left home and cut everyone off. Hell, I had no idea he existed. Fast forward and my first cousin is excited to bring her husband to the family reunion. The two eloped. So we did not know who this mystery man was. She walks up and there's our second cousin with her. The older family members knew exactly who he was and, well, they were expecting and married. So we said F it and just had the family reunion. We don't mention the cousin thing because it's been acknowledged and we all decided to move past it as to not make them feel weird. How my parents were able to afford a house suddenly while working a minimum wage job and having recently immigrated to America dirt poor. They would never tell me where they got the money from. You're not the only thing they smuggled in. I know a guy who runs a successful used car dealership. I'm trustworthy enough that he told me about how he was failing to make it in American business and had his business fail, which was a store. He used gas stations to launder gas station credit accounts to get enough to get back on his feet so he could fix his first auction cars to get them ready for sale. I bought a car from him about 2 years ago. It's still going with 170+ miles. He's pretty straightforward. He also helped me pressure a fellow used car dealer that was much less scrupulous. I had 2 uncles. My uncle accidentally ran over his brother when they were in their 20s and drunk one night. The brother died a few days later. That's not talked about. Only found out from my aunt when she was under anesthesia and blurting out all kinds of holy sh. I got to start hanging out with elderly relatives going under anesthesia. I caught my parents smoking weed once when I was young and one day after I got yelled at for something threatened that I knew a secret that could tear this family apart. I just finished taking DARE so I thought that was a big deal. My parents flipped out. Turns out my dad was having an affair and my mom only had slight suspicions and I brought the whole thing to light. Did not expect that at all. Well, that went 0-100 really quick. The time my mom was on Wheel of Fortune. It did not go well. This should have way more upvotes. The scenarios I'm imagining are hilarious. Logistically, my sister's first child cannot possibly have been her husband's biological child. But he claimed the child as his own. They eloped about 6 weeks before he was born. There is no way he wasn't deployed when conception took place. She hasn't ever said a single word about it. But everyone knows. We're not sure if he's actually that bad at math. He is pretty dumb. Or if he didn't care. Maybe he's got sperm issues and they decided to do the sperm donor way. The bunny incident. So we had a bunny at our dad's house a few years ago. Its name was Wally. My dad has bad OCD so he tried to wash it. For people who don't know, you don't wash bunnies. Spoiler alert. He died. TL. Dr. Bunnies are water soluble. That my mom had a baby at 17 and was forced to give it up for adoption. No one but a few people know. Even less who will talk about it. My mom has never recovered from being tricked into giving up her baby. I still wonder if this is what happened to my grandma. Or a forced abortion. It was right before WW2. A really super fast whirlwind relationship before my grandpa was deployed. And their letters are really censored and vague but strong hints of something that happened right after he was deployed. They were married for another almost 50 years after that. But they were both super messed up. Totally checked out as parents to my mom and her siblings. Ever since mom finally got to read the letters, I've thought there was probably a decision made that basically ruined the rest of their lives. That my family was very involved with a small 50 family top secret cult that included preparing for the end of the world and stockpiling canned goods and water in $1 million barn in the woods surrounded by small cabins. My parents got recruited for this cult when I was 4 years old and left when I was 15. It was our whole life. Everything revolved around it. All our money went into it. My parents can't talk about it. My mother flies into an insane rage. I've never told anyone the whole story start to finish. I doubt I ever will. I could write a book about the bizarre childhood I had. The rampant alcoholism. I'll drink to that. My cousin, who is a principal and was married with kids, had an affair with a teacher. She was also married. They both ended both of their marriages and got together. The teacher was my math teacher at the time while this all happened. Now they're married and I see them at family reunions. Extremely awkward for me. This couple must be so dumb. How can you expect to create a long-lasting relationship when it started from cheating on two people? How can they trust each other at all? My sister is really my stepsister. Didn't find out till I was like 35. If she's your sister in your heart, words like step and half don't mean a thing. I got 2 stepsisters when I was 12. I don't have stepsisters. I have sisters. They're family and I take issue with anyone who says different. We aren't even that close. But I consider them my family and their husbands my brothers-in-law. And they're good guys. too. The friend of a close cousin who violated me. Everyone acts like it never happened. Better yet, he died a few years later and they all were part of the big memorial that has become an annual thing. They even wear rubber bracelets for the guy. Pretty much disowned all my family. Jesus. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And that your family essentially kept the trauma going. Glad you got out and didn't play their BS. Though I'm sure that was a brutal process as well. But at least you can piss on his grave. My parents were never actually married and played it off like they were for 20 plus years. Oh, and my dad cheated on my mom with a dude who dresses in drag for a living. Chandler. Is that you? A few suicidal attention signs many of us used over the years. Kids learn from parents. So when mom said some dark stuff to manipulate us a few times, we caved. When we learned it was a bluff, we started doing it, and one of my siblings even cut themselves a few times to get to what they wanted. It's messed up. Now my mom is in her 60s and has claimed if she goes blind she will kill herself. But that was a few years ago we last heard that claim. My cousin actually committed suicide last year and there has been no cries for attention or manipulation after that. Plus we are all grown now and know better. But it was an emotionally abusive and manipulative way to grow up. My mother's mental health. She hallucinated off and on for years and was never totally stable. She didn't believe there was anything wrong with her and never got help. But she told everyone in the immediate family. And she's mentioned that over the years she discussed her visions with various other people. Like, it's a known thing about her. But we never discussed it among ourselves at home when she wasn't in the room. No one outside of our immediate family, who also knows about her condition, has ever brought it up to me. I think if a bunch of us were ever in the same room and the subject came up in conversation, all of our brains would melt and pour right out of our ears. My sister's weight. Extremely touchy subject. She started putting on the pounds at about age 11 and hit 375 before graduating from high school. Along with other eating disorder standbys like hoarding and hiding food and stealing money to buy it. Her efforts to lose weight included things like pinning swimsuit model pin-ups to the fridge for encouragement. It didn't help that she was emotionally fragile and had anger management issues. My parents apparently thought that they could avoid conflict by banning all discussion of the most visible symptom of her failed coping skills. Boy, were they wrong. They didn't tolerate the lying or the stealing. There was some memorable shouting, but there was absolutely no treatment for the actual addiction. The source of the conflict. My great uncle got his cousin pregnant in the early 1930s and they had to get married. They had several children. And by all accounts their marriage was a happy one. It wasn't until I was putting together family trees, and both were long dead, that I realized what happened. My grandfather wasn't on speaking terms with his brother for a long time, not regarding this, but other family issues. So it was an easy subject to avoid. The fact that my brother and I still keep regular contact with our former stepfather, he and our mom got divorced 3 years ago. My brother and I still attend holidays with his side of the family, occasionally grab dinner, and get along well with his new fiancée. We don't tell our mom about any of this, although she is aware that we still talk to him. I mean, the man helped raise us, and we don't hold any grudges against him. Neither of us were willing to throw that relationship away simply because he and our mom weren't married anymore. I accidentally texted my family I can't decide if jacking off at my great grandma's house is worth it or not instead of a different group chat. It doesn't get brought up, but oh boy do I think about it a lot. I've always wondered what circumstances could push me to suicide. Thanks for clearing that up for me. My mom's older brother is estranged from the family. I don't think he even called or sent condolences when my grandmother, his mom, died recently. My mom will bring him up sometimes like, Alan has nothing good to say about our parents. But I tell him he needs to get over it. Blah blah blah. I can't even exactly remember what she says because she is always very vague. Every single time I ask, why doesn't he talk to grandma and grandpa? Every single time she says, oh, because. And then Effine drops it. So, I guess that is the thing we don't talk about. Interestingly, several years ago I asked my biological father, my mom's first husband, why my uncle doesn't talk to my mom or their parents. He gave me an answer. He said, well, I guess no one has told you, but your grandfather used to do weird things to your mother when she was younger. He apologized later and she forgave him. You know, if I were in my uncle's position, I wouldn't effing talk to them either tbh. I haven't told my mom because while my father has never lied to me, this information is coming to me like secondhand and I'm always wary of info like that. And also, that's not really a conversation I want to have with my mom unless she volunteers the info herself. And even then. My grandfather's second wife. She manipulated him to get most of his money. And when he died she managed to get his gravestone inscribed only with words saying he was a loving husband to her. She's an a-hole too. Mentioning her just pisses my dad off and puts him in a bad mood. We call her LV. Or Lady Voldemort. My mom. And the fact I have a different mom from my sisters. Oh, and how my mom died, or that I could also have the same disease that killed her, and basically anything that deviates from the outward perception we are the perfect little nuclear family. My brother's hoarding. He's been without hot water since October because there is no room to move the old water heater down from the second floor, which was a terrible design in the first place. We're an Asian family. And he's the firstborn son. So apparently mental illness is fine and dandy. The one time I mentioned he might have mental health issues my mom snapped at me. They live in Los Angeles. And I worry when a big earthquake hits he'll seriously get buried. I watch the Hoarders show to better understand him. He's a frugal, logical, cheap deal freebie hoarder. Which is like the worst combination because the argument you should get rid of things to free up space in your household's no water for him. And every argument he makes for why he has 5 of this one thing, or picked up this free thing, makes sense other than the fact all the stuff is getting out of control and not even being used. He's an avid reader also, and said Marie Kondo's book was triggering.